we identified as our central point is the intersection of Gilbert and McMillan. And these studies, and it's a shame because this is one of the most important parts of our presentation that we're giving very little time to, but these studies over here, this represent the street character of what we do to the street. So we are considering making McMillan as half two-way, not considering we're proposing that. And the reason for that is that it's more accessible for cars. I mean, in an ideal world, of course, you'd have people biking and walking all the time with a BMI of 22, but considering where we are, it is important to give a nod to the cars. So here's the revised street section from McMillan. We have a 10-foot sidewalk, 8-foot parking, 11-foot lanes, and 3 to 4 foot of the 10-foot sidewalk is a hardscape buffer zone, so that we can potentially have areas for seats, and it also becomes the stormwater treatment a little bit because it'll be pervious hardscaping. And this is a rendering down the street of various pocket parks. So this is segueing into our green space network. Our idea is to have a sawtooth pattern of parks that runs up McMillan and also, up Gilbert and also east-west from McMillan. And the reason for that is to create more programmed green spaces, which we realize that our neighborhood is lacking in. And so if you can see the pattern here is that they would be interspersed on either side of the street, going up in strategic locations, and that way it creates a space that's more pleasant to walk through. And actually that brings right into our group project here, which Gabe and I worked on this one, and we did a more zoomed in study of that Gilbert-McMillan intersection. And so right here, so what we've done is we've gone into adjusting the grocery store so that it's still in this corner, but the rest of it we want to make storefront retail. And we've programmed our green spaces, and so the main idea is that we're still keeping a nod to what's existing by kind of framing these historic and culturally relevant buildings. So we have the church tower on this corner with Walnut Hills Public Library and People's Corner. And our strategy for doing that is to create a green space just across the street or in some way that relates to this space directly and also connects to the rest of the other three. We've also taken careful note on how much parking that would be required, because again, the cars are so important to this part of the neighborhood. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, that's the main idea.
Just go ahead and point. Why don't you point to those landmarks on the plan?
Is the church
tower is here. Reclaiming this as a public amenity, open park.
And again, programs so there are spaces to meet and sit.
The next connects visually to People's Corner, which is right here, and the Paramount Building. And we created a pedestrian access through to the Carnegie Library.
And again, the program space here would be a pavilion. There's also a bus stop here, so it starts getting into multi-use there because it could be a bus shelter for people just waiting. And also it's also a very visually prominent area of our site.
For my individual assignment, I focused on the I-71 corridor, and not only the corridor along Walnut Hills, but also further up north. And I came with this rather conceptual idea of covering the entire corridor with a park, with a green layer, putting the highway underground, and by doing so, create something that really generates the neighborhoods around it, really generates the city, stimulates the city, the traffic flows and everything that's connected to that. And while discussing that with Frank, apparently Cincinnati already had a history of parks like that with these green corridors with the Kessler Plan, which was made in 1907. And he proposed a series of parks. This is the Kessler Plan. He proposed a series of parks which were pretty much all established and they were all built, but he also proposed a connection in between those parks of green corridors. And it's a shame actually that never was realized. Well, some of it was realized, but for instance the I-71 corridor, he proposed a green corridor over there with the idea of the Deer Creek that was already present then and the topography of the site. But instead of doing that, a highway was built. Looking to other cities around the world, you see, for instance, Central Park in New York, you see Hyde Park, London, you see the Tuileries in Paris, you see the Millennium Park in Chicago, and the Central Park in Brussels, and you see with all of these examples that the park really stimulates the city and generates activity and contributes to living qualities and connection along the park. So if I look more into it, what I really did was putting the highway underground, really conceptual, saying from here till here, the highway, you cannot see it anymore, it's underground, you have access above ground to the highway, and then it's just a big tunnel. And above the ground, I designed some sort of edge from building to building, and by doing so, I created this green corridor. The color difference is not so big, but the very big corridor you see here is just a corridor, and then the lighter green is the park, and it goes from building to building. And by doing so, I created some sort of new typology to the buildings that all of a sudden got like this new facade towards a park, towards this corridor, with also a new system of transit, with a bike lane, with this river that links to the historical meaning of the Deer Creek and everything. My time is up, I feel it, but really quick maybe the figures, because it's rather conceptual and people tend to not look at it maybe if they think that it's not realistic. But if you see that now 1/3 of the space is used for streets or for buildings, and 2/3 of it in this corridor is empty, it maybe justifies this intervention as being 1/3 out of this entire corridor could be a park, and this is the 1/3 that you see here. It is this park from building to building that generates connectivity along it as well as across it and everything. I'll stop here.